Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the GSMC Baseball Podcast. My name is Patrick Kinney. I'm going to be your host for today's episode. You can follow me on my Twitter at Patrick_Kenny. You can follow us on Twitter at GSMC_baseball. But let's just get right into it. So, starting off today, I have a few updates on what the heck is going on in the bigs at the moment. That includes Castellanos' suspension, what went on there. That includes the All-Star Game being moved to a new location that has been announced. And, of course, it also includes the Rougned Odor trade that is going on sort of as I sat down to record. So I'm going to throw that in as well with the amount of as much detail as I possibly can. So, first of all, we're going to get into the Castellanos order of business first and foremost. And then after this segment, we'll go into a few stats and standing updates. After that segment, it'll be a 5 teams that have some legit concerns after their opening series. And then, the last part of the segment, we're going to be going over, or last part of the episode today, I should say, we're going to be going over some of the most surprising teams out of the gate. Like, coming out of the gate, whether they just completely just fell asleep and didn't do very good this to start out, or they surprised everybody and ended up sweeping a series or something like that. So, back to Nicholas Castellanos. A lot of him, everybody knows the infamy with his name and everything that was going on with him. Just about last summer, when the announcer Tom Brenneman got caught on a hot mic saying a homophobic slur, and then during his ill-advised apology, decided that it was important to still call the baseball game while he was there, and Castellanos happened to hit a home run. And if you're familiar with baseball Twitter at all, there's this account that tweets out every time somebody hits a home run, and every time Nicholas Castellanos has hit a home run, by the way, he's already hit 3 so far, and every time he gets a ball out of the ballpark, it's everybody in the comments or they're quoting the tweet with the short phrase that Tom Brenneman had said. I won't go into it right now, but essentially Castellanos hit a home run and it landed into the it landed into the Planet Fitness no judgment zone, which was a little bit ironic. So he hit a home run on the first game of the season. And then in I believe it was the second game of the series between the Reds and the Cardinals. And the Reds and the Cardinals have always had a bit of a rivalry going. So it's going to be it's a little interesting to say the least there, the situation that they have. And so every once in a while you'll see a brawl, but Castellanos gets up to the plate, gets hit on purpose. He goes to get the ball and tries to toss it back to the pitcher, who I believe was a rookie he's a rookie this year, and he goes to try and toss to him, and I'll get his name here in a second. But basically, the pitcher was Jake Woodruff, and he hit Castellanos with a fastball that was like 92 miles an hour on the ribs, and Castellanos' plate appearance in the 4th inning of their second game. And Castellanos goes to flip him the ball after getting hit. It was intentional. At least that's how everybody is sort of viewing it as. So it was an intentional sort of thing that was happening with him. And when Castellanos got hit, he goes to toss the ball back to Woodruff, and Woodruff doesn't like it, so he tosses it back to the dugout. Flash forward a little bit. Castellanos is on third base. A wild pitch happens. Castellanos scores, gets up, and reportedly said, "Let's effing go," and flexed on top of the pitcher. And Yadier Molina's job as the catcher is to sort of protect his pitcher. So he went over there and started pushing him, and then a whole bunch of, a little bit of fighting happened, a few punches were thrown, and long story short, Castellanos gets suspended for 2 games. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that, I actually don't agree with that at all. I don't think that Castellanos really did anything wrong other than being a competitor right there. And really because he was just being a competitor, I think that any competitor understands what he did. He didn't do anything really that bad. He just was like, all right, you're gonna put me on the hard way, and I scored the hard way. So why don't kind of respect me, kind of thing. So Castellanos is suspended for 2 games. People on baseball Twitter aren't really too happy about it, especially considering that nobody on the 2017 Astros World Championship team that was on that team, none of the players got suspended for literally cheating their way to a championship, and because of that, a lot of people are pretty upset about it. Going now to the Rougned Odor trade. So Odor has been traded from the Rangers to the New York Yankees for 2 prospects, and those prospects are Antonio Cabello and Josh Stowers for a pair of they are the minor league outfielding prospects. Odor left off the opening day roster for the Rangers this year, so it made it pretty obvious that the 27-year-old was going to be somewhere else pretty soon. He makes $12 million in 2021 and 2022 before he has a $13.5 million club option for 2023 that includes a $3 million buyout. This is all per Jeff Passons of ESPN. And Passan reported that the Rangers are expected to absorb almost the entirety of the $27 million that is owed to Rougned Odor. The Rangers would not only trade Odor, but also take on a lot of his outstanding money. In order to do so is an indicator of how much his on-field value has fallen in the recent seasons. In 2016, a 22-year-old Odor had 33 home runs and 88 RBIs, and finished 14th in WAR among second basemen that season. But since then, he has only hit .215 with a .279 on base percentage per Baseball Reference. His strikeouts of 514 have been far outpaced his hits with 374. So long story short, the Rangers thought he was going to be the answer to them and their prayers, and it just doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So the Yankees are trading for him, not going to really take up much of his not really take up much of his contract, which is good for the Yankees. And they add a little bit of depth too. So if DJ LeMahieu tweaks his wrist and has to be out for 2 or 3 games, they have a decent replacement there. He can also play shortstop a little bit, so I think the Odor trade is really good for the Yankees. I don't know how valued the prospects that the Yankees had to give up were, but I don't think it would have been anything too special. I don't think it was their number 1 guy or anything like that for Rougned Odor. So I think that he is a decent hitter. Buster Olney of ESPN reports that, or tweeted, I should say, in Rougned Odor's career, he was a remarkably better hitter versus right-handed pitchers than left-handed pitchers. and the New York Yankees really need a left-handed hitting balance. It'll be interesting to see if they broach the subject of him accepting days into the minor leagues to work on his swing and attempt to whatever adjustments the New York Yankees have in mind. So, I think that this is a good deal for the Yankees. I don't think that they gave up that much. At least I don't view them giving up anything like that significant for a player that we've seen perform very, very well in the past, and in doing so, he's obviously going to live on forever with the Jose Bautista fight between him and Bautista a few years ago. And I think that hopefully he'll fix some of the issues in his swing that maybe the Yankees are seeing that the Rangers haven't. And maybe this change of scenery is exactly what he needed. Maybe it's sort of like a Francisco Lindor type thing where he just needs to get out and get into a new place, and then all of a sudden he's back to where he was a couple years ago. And so this next one, if you listen to my last episode on, I believe it was Sunday, if you listen to that episode, we talked about the All-Star Game being pulled out of Atlanta, as well as the MLB draft there. So Major League Baseball has made the announcement that the 2021 All-Star Game, presented by MasterCard, and the surrounding events will be hosted by the Colorado Rockies. The national broadcast of the All-Star Game is going to be on Fox and will be held Tuesday, July 13th. It is going to be baseball's 91st Midsummer Classic and only the second ever in Denver. So joining the 1998 event in Coors Field as well. So, the draft is expected to be held there as a part of the All-Star festivities and is tentatively scheduled for Sunday, July 11th at a to-be-determined venue in Denver. I don't know if that one is going to be super important, like where they draft where the draft is held this year. I just think that the draft is going to be sort of whatever this year. I really not too many people really pay attention to the draft anyway, unless there's just like that one big prospect that everybody knows is going to go first overall, and even then, there's really not that much. So, I don't think baseball really needs to have their draft, that the draft is that big of an issue for them. I'm sure they could do it over like Zoom calls or something like that as well, and just televise it sort of from their studios at MLB Network kind of a thing. But the commissioner of baseball, Robert Manfred Jr., said, quote, "Major League Baseball is grateful to the Rockies, the city of Denver, and the state of Colorado for their support of this summer's All-Star Game. We appreciate the flexibility and enthusiasm to deliver a first-class event for our game and the region. We look forward to celebrating our sport's best players and entertaining fans around the world. We are excited to host," and this is from Greg Fiesel, the Rockies' chief operating officer. "We are excited to host this year's All-Star festivities at Coors Field. We are confident that that our organization, along with the city-state Visit Denver and the Denver Sports Commission, are capable of putting this on this premier event in a relatively quick time frame because of the preparations that have already been done. Summer in Colorado is something everyone in the country should experience, and we embrace this opportunity to show off our beautiful ballpark and everything our city, state, and region have to offer." The Dodgers are going to be are remaining the projected host of the 2022 All-Star Game. As previously announced, it will be the first Midsummer Classic at the historic Dodger Stadium since 1980. The decision comes after Major League Baseball announced that it would relocate the All-Star Game and draft from Atlanta in response to the passage last month of SB 202, a Georgia law that President Biden recently criticized, saying that it will restrict voting access for residents of the state. Manfred said in a statement that the decision to move the All-Star Game was, quote, "the best way to demonstrate our values as a sport and was made after consulting with our team's former and current players, the Major League Baseball Players Association, and the Players Alliance, among others. So the All-Star Game's no longer going to be taking place in Atlanta. And they will still celebrate the memory of Hank Aaron, obviously an Atlanta icon who passed away very recently in January 22nd of this year. Major League Baseball will also move forward with planned investments to support local communities in Atlanta as part of the All-Star Legacy projects. Major League Baseball's decision was not without a precedent among other major sports, though. In 2016, the NBA, the National Basketball Association, moved the location of the 2017 All-Star Game, which is held every February, from Charlotte to New Orleans in objection to North Carolina's Bill 2, which limited anti-discrimination protections in the state. As well as in 1991, NFL owners voted to move the 1993 Super Bowl from Phoenix to Pasadena, California, after Arizona voters elected not to make Martin Luther King Jr. Day a paid holiday. Arizona eventually recognized MLK Day and was awarded a Super Bowl in 1996 and again in 2008. So this is not without precedent. Teams have made decisions like these in the past, organizations of major sporting events have definitely made moves like this in the past. So it's not like Major League Baseball had anything to really worry about other than that. And hopefully Major League Baseball is able to work with the legislators in Georgia as well as the Braves and the surrounding community to sort of probably get the I would say to see if there is some middle ground, or if even get the voters to flip. I'm not too sure what the what Major League Baseball's real I guess their true feelings toward the subject. I'm sure that this was definitely just a business move, so that way they didn't have to deal with like all of the bad publicity and stuff like that. But I would say that things like the majors the majors are going on right now in golf, and I think that is something that probably could have been postponed, or either I don't know if it would be postponed, or if golf could have made it like they could have made it like a non-major type of event, sort of. But I'm not too sure what golf could have done. I think that Major League Baseball, however, made the right move in this aspect, just because I think that they have a duty to their fans to not let something like this, like the voting law, go into place without some kind of repercussions from from basically who they do business with, who the major cities and stuff do business with. And while it's not necessarily it's not the players' fault, it's not the Atlanta Braves' fault, but it is something that Major League Baseball did need to do, I think, to at least cover their bases at the very least. So, with that being said, we're going to go into the next segment here in just a second and talk about update the stats and the standings. We're going to go over through all the league leaders right now after the first few games in baseball. But the All-Star Game is now in Coors Field. The All-Star Game will now be held at Coors Field. Rougned Odor has been traded to the Yankees, and Nicholas Castellanos has been suspended for a few games because of his involvement in the incident just a few days ago. So We'll be right back in just a second.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Alrighty, and welcome back into the second segment of today's episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. So, first of all, most teams have played about 4 games or so far this year. So, we're just going to go over some regular season standing updates, then go through some stats for this segment. Then I'm going to go through about 5 teams that actually have a few concerns after the first few games of the year. And then we're going to go through some teams that I found that were most surprising. Let's just get into it. We're going to start out in the NL West. The Dodgers are 4-1 through the first 5 games. They lost their first game, but since then have gone on a 4-game winning streak. The Padres, who were at the top of the division, won their first 3 games and now have lost their last 2, so they're on a 2-game losing streak. The Giants are in third place out in the NL West, going 2-2 so far with a .500 record. The Arizona Diamondbacks are 1-3, as are the Colorado Rockies. The Rockies have lost their last 3 straight, whereas the Diamondbacks have won their first game after losing their first 3. The Dodgers are playing Oakland right now, and the Padres are playing San Francisco. And these are some fun games, and I think that this is probably going to be how the standings end up finishing in the NL West. The Dodgers and the Padres might flip back and forth here every once in a while, but for the most part, I think that's probably what's going to how the records are going to go against some other teams. The Dodgers have yet to play a home game, however. They are 4-1 on the road. Obviously, that's their record, and the Padres have only played at home, so they're 3-2. The Padres and the Dodgers are the only 2 teams that have a positive run differential. The Dodgers are +12, and the Dodgers are +12, and the Padres are +7 through their first through their first 5 games each. Going out to the NL Central, a bit of a shocker out here. The Cincinnati Reds won their series against the St. Louis Cardinals, and so the Pittsburgh Pirates are 1-3 right now. As are the Milwaukee Brewers. St. Louis is 2-2 so far, and the Reds and Chicago Cubs are tied for first place with a 3-1 record, both 1 game up on the St. Louis Cardinals. The Reds are +11 in run differential, and the Cubs are +5 in run differential. So right now the Reds are on a 3-game winning streak, as are the Cubs. The Cubs are playing Milwaukee, and the Reds are playing the Pirates right now. The St. Louis Cardinals are playing the Miami Marlins right now in the series against them. And that's pretty much everything that's going on in the NL Central. I would say that the Reds are one of the more surprising teams, so we're probably going to talk about them for a little bit in the last segment of today's episode. And then you go out to the NL East. Washington has yet to play any games, so they are sitting at a perfect 0-0. They are 2 games back from first place. They're currently in third place in the division. Atlanta is 0-3. They're about to play Washington today, and so by the time this episode goes out, the standings will be a little bit different, obviously, but for the most part, they'll pretty much be the same. Atlanta and Washington are playing today in Atlanta, April 6th, as I'm recording this. The Mets are in 4th place in the division with an 0-1 record. They're playing Philadelphia. And Miami Marlins are currently in 2nd place in the division at 1-3. They are 3 games back from first place in the division. The Philadelphia Phillies are the only team that are positive. in run differential with +8. Miami is -1. The Mets are -2 considering they've only played one game, and Atlanta is -6 in the 3 games that they have played. Washington obviously plays their first game today, Tuesday, April 6th, and we will find out a little bit more about what they're going to look like later on in the year. Out in the AL West, there are the Houston Astros and the Los Angeles Angels, who are tied for first place, both at 4-1. Then you have the Seattle Mariners, who are in third place with a 2-2 record. The Texas Rangers are in fourth with a 1-3 record. And one of the most surprising things I've seen this year, and just because all of the experts and everything were picking the Oakland A's to just come out and be really hot out of the gate, they're in last place right now with an 0-5 record. They are -33 in run differential. The Rangers are -11. Seattle is -4. The Angels, while being 4-1, their run differential is only +3, and the Houston Astros have been coming out of the gate hot and swinging the bat quite well. They did lose their last game against the Angels, however, so that's the reason they're kind of tied right now, but the Astros are still +25 in the run differential category. Then you go out to the AL Central, and I would say that the leader in the division is a little surprising. Minnesota, not so much, but they are tied with the Kansas City Royals right now. Both teams are 3-1. Minnesota is on a 3-game winning streak, whereas Kansas City is on a 1-game winning streak. And then you go to Detroit, who is -11 in run differential, and they are 2-2. The White Sox are 2-3 with a +4 run differential, and then Payne. As you might know, I am a Cleveland Indian fan. I have been a Cleveland Indian fan for most of my life, so it's hard to talk about this team without showing a little bit of emotion. But so far, their season has been very disappointing to a lot of people. They are 1-3. They got absolutely blown out by Detroit in the series up there. Granted, the first game of the season was a little bit of a weird one where it was 30 degrees and snowing, and I'm sure everybody saw that amazing video of Miguel Cabrera hitting that home run. But I think that it's pretty interesting, to say the very least, about how much, or how it's definitely surprising to see how the starting pitchers on the Cleveland Indians are doing this year. They're doing relatively well, actually. It's just there's not enough run support right now for the Indians. They've only scored 13 runs in their games, and they've given up 14. So that's a little bit of a shocker there, to say the very least, because most people were projecting the Indians to finish either second or third in the division. I kind of had a little bit more hope and optimism for them and had them out in, or hopefully I had them to get in to maybe first place or maybe compete for the wild card. But if they don't turn things around pretty soon, it's probably not going to happen. Their next game will be on Wednesday, April 7th versus Kansas City. Right now, Detroit and Minnesota are in a they're in a series right now, and actually, as I'm recording it, they're actually playing at the moment. And then you go out to the AL East, where probably the most surprising season, I would say probably the most surprising record of anybody is the league, or is the leader of this one. Granted, they did lose their last game against the Yankees, but so far they are doing pretty well, I would say. Baltimore opened the season with a sweep of the Boston Red Sox, and Toronto and Baltimore share the top spot currently at in first place in the American League East with a 3-1 record. And then you go down to tied for third place, which is the Yankees and Tampa Bay, both tied at 2-2, and then Boston at 1-3. So, I mean, it's definitely really interesting to see these teams. Baltimore is in my opinion one of the most surprising teams of the year so far. I would also say Detroit's probably pretty surprising as well. So I mean, I don't want to get too into who my teams are just yet, but I still think that these two teams are or those two teams are definitely very surprising. It's pretty interesting, honestly, to see which one is doing, or which team is doing really good. And I think the Baltimore Orioles came out of the gate hot. Everybody was projecting them to finish dead last in the entire league. And they said, hang on, we decide the outcome of the games, not y'all. So I think that's pretty interesting to say the very least. And now we're going to go over to average and stuff right now, here in just a second.
And I have everything pulled up now. And so we're going to go through, we're just going to start off with the league leaders in average right here. I'm going to go through about the first 5 or so. Yermin Mercedes is the league leader right now in the 18 at-bats that he has. He's hitting .667 with 12 hits in his 18 at-bats. He's hit 3 doubles, 1 home run, has 6 RBIs, 1 walk, and 2 strikeouts. His on-base percentage is .684. He has a 1,000 slugging percentage, and his OPS is 1,684. And then you go to second place is Cedric Mullins, the center fielder for Baltimore. In the 5 games and 17 plate appearances he has 10 hits, 3 doubles, no home runs, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts for a .588 average and a .611 OPS. His slugging percentage is .765 and his OPS is 1376. Then you go to third with Ketel Marte for Arizona. Out of the 4 games that he has played, he has had 16 at-bats, 9 hits, 2 doubles, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs, 2 walks, and 2 strikeouts for a .563 average and a .611 OBS, excuse me. And then you go to tied for 4th, and you have Nicholas Castellanos and JD Martinez. Both have played in 5 games and have 15 at-bats. Both have 8 hits. Castellanos gets the edge in runs scored with 7 as compared to JD Martinez's 4. Castellanos has 1 double, JD Martinez has 3. Castellanos has 1 triple, and Castellanos has 3 home runs compared to JD Martinez's 2. Both players have 6 RBIs. Castellanos has yet to strike out this season. He also has 1 walk. JD Martinez has 2 walks and 3 strikeouts. They both have the same average and OBP, which is a .533 average and a .588 on-base percentage. And now going to hit leaders, obviously Yermin Mercedes is the league leader in hits with 12. Cedric Mullins is second in hits with 10. And then tied for third, we have Yuri Gurriel, Ketel Marte, Corey Seager, and Donovan Solano. All of those players are tied with 9 hits. And then Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, Nicholas Castellanos, JD Martinez, Whit Merrifield, and Max Muncy are all tied for 7th with 8 hits. The league leaders in doubles so far this year, Michael Brantley has hit 4 doubles. Hanser Alberto, the third baseman for Kansas City, as well as Mitch Haniger, the right fielder for Seattle. Rhys Hopkins, the first baseman for Philly. Max Kepler for Minnesota. JD Martinez for Boston. Zach McKinstry, the second baseman for the Dodgers. Yermin Mercedes, the DH for the White Sox. Cedric Mullins, the center fielder for Baltimore, and Corey Seager are all tied for second with 3 doubles apiece. And then a bunch of guys have also hit 2 doubles this year so far. And then we're going over to 3 baggers. Gavin Lux leads the league with two triple baggers, and then Cody Bellinger, Mark Canha, Nicholas Castellanos, Willie Castro, the shortstop for Detroit, Jazz Chisenholm Jr. of Miami, Jake Cronenworth, the second baseman for the Padres, Adam Frazier, the second baseman for Pittsburgh, Kyle Isabel, the right fielder for Kansas City, Max Kepler, and then a bunch of other guys all the way going down until number 19 are all tied for 2 with 1 triple apiece. Going over to home runs, the home run leader so far is there are 5 guys tied for first with 3 home runs. That is Byron Buxton, the center fielder for Minnesota, Nicholas Castellanos, the right fielder for the Reds, Nelson Cruz, The DH for Minnesota, Evan Longoria, and Whit Merrifield are all tied with 3 home runs. And then a bunch of guys are tied for 7th place with 2 home runs apiece, with Ronald Acuna Jr., Alex Bregman, Paul DeJong, Eric Hosmer, Ketel Marte, JD Martinez, Austin Meadows, Colin Monroe, first baseman for Pittsburgh, Shohei Ohtani, Buster Posey, Gary Sanchez, Marcus Semien, Will Smith, Michael Taylor, the center fielder for Kansas City, Mike Trout, and Jared Walsh. Both of those players obviously are Angels. Jared Walsh is a first baseman. All of those players, along with Akil Baddoo, the left fielder for Detroit, are all tied with 2 home runs. Then you go over to RBI leaders. It is Nate Lowe of the Rangers, the first baseman, with 10. And then Whit Merrifield and Kyle Tucker are tied with 9 RBIs apiece. Then tied for 4th is Johan Alvarez, Nelson Cruz, and Jared Walsh. All of those players are tied with 7 RBIs so far. Going to strikeout leaders, and that's a little surprising so far. Yohan Moncada still struggling to get the bat on the ball with 11 strikeouts. Miguel Sano, the first baseman for Minnesota, with 10 strikeouts. And then Nick Solak, the second baseman for the Rangers. Lodi Tavers, the center fielder for the Rangers. Christian Yelich, the left fielder for Milwaukee, obviously, are all tied with 9. And then Jose Abreu, Keston Hiura, and Martin Maldonado, as well as Austin Slater, are all tied with 8 strikeouts so far. And then Javier Baez, Jazz Chisholm Jr., Dylan Monroe, Shohei Ohtani, Chris Owings, Marcus Semien, and the left fielder for the Yankees, Mike Tauchman, are all tied for the league lead in stolen bases with 2 apiece. Going over to pitching, we're just going to go over to innings pitched so far. There's not going to be a whole lot really here just yet, but Dylan Bundy is leading the league in innings pitched with 9 innings, followed by Zach Greinke with 8 innings, then Aaron Savall of Cleveland, Zach Efron of Philadelphia, John Means of Baltimore, Julio Urias of the Dodgers, and Zach Wheeler of Philadelphia are all tied for 3rd with 7 innings pitched. In earned runs, the league leader of runs given up, I should say, are Luis Castillo. Granted, a lot of the runs that he gave up were sort of the fault of Eugenio Suarez at shortstop. His first game, he just kind of had a few errors that resulted in a bunch of runs scoring for St. Louis in their first game. He's given up 8 hits, 10 total runs, 8 of them earned, 1 home run. He's hit 1 batter and walked 2. And then we're gonna go over to. It's hard really to see a bunch of, or to really gauge a lot of these pitchers so far, just on their after their first game. I want to say it's just hard to see who is sort of struggling so far, because you only have one pitch, or you've really only seen these guys pitch one time this year, so not a lot's going to change here. The league leaders, however, in saves so far are tied for first. We have Diego Castillo for Tampa Bay, Jake McGee for San Francisco, Mark Melicone of San Diego, Julian Merriweather of Toronto, and Cesar Valdez all have 2 saves so far. Nobody has thrown a complete game yet this year. Obviously, a lot of guys are pitching in are pitching on with short leashes so far. The only 2 guys that have pitched more than 1 game this year are Dylan Bundy of the Angels and Zach Greinke of Houston. Zach Greinke 1-0 with a 2.08 ERA. Dylan Bundy has yet to get a decision, but does have a 5 ERA. Greinke has pitched 8 2/3 innings, and Bundy has pitched 9 innings. So with that being said, we're going to go over 5 teams that have legit concerns after the first few games here in the bigs here in just a second. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back in just a second, guys.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And all right, everybody, welcome back to the third segment of today's episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. So the first team that I really have serious concerns about are the Red Sox. The Red Sox just have not been good this year so far. They're 1-3, and they got swept by Baltimore. They did beat Tampa Bay and bounce back a little bit, but Tampa Bay they won their first series and went 2-1 and had a 2-1 record. But after getting swept by Baltimore, you got to think that your team isn't necessarily that. You can't be that confident in your team, to say the very least. So they're being outscored so far 16-20. They are on a winning streak. Fortunately, they did just beat Toronto. They have only played just one night game, so they're 0-3 in day games so far, and they've only played on grass fields, so they're 1-3 on grass field instead of turf fields. But they should be better than what they are right now, like without a doubt. They're 2 games back right now of first place because it is still it is still pretty new, but they are not doing well right now. Currently, the Red Sox rank 25th in hitting stats right now. They've had a combined 130 at bats. They're hitting just 238. This is ranked in OPS, by the way. So they're 25th in OPS. They're just hitting 238. Their on-base percentage is 285, which it's okay. Their offense hasn't been great so far, but that's okay. There's nothing really to worry about there just yet. They've hit 8 doubles. But they've only had 31 hits. They only have 2 home runs on the team, both of those coming from JD Martinez, and they only have 15 RBIs so far as well. Their team is also striking out a lot. They are not hitting the ball well right now. They're striking out 32 times as opposed to 9 walks, and that's just not a recipe for success in baseball at all. If you're not getting on base, you're not putting your team in a good position to win, and they are not doing that at all. In terms of ERA, they are ranked 17th with a 4.50 ERA. They are 1-3, obviously, in the 4 games that they've played. Obviously, 3 games. They have yet to go into overtime, so only 36 innings of sample size really to go through. They've given up 41 hits and 20 runs 18 of them earned, 17 walks as opposed to 41 strikeouts, and their whip is a 161. Opponents are hitting 285 off of them right now. So, I mean, really, the one question for the Red Sox is, what can we really expect out of their rotation? Like last season, they just fell into just so many holes, like with losing Chris Sale right off the bat, right before the season, I believe. It's just not. They're just not what they were a few years ago, and that wasn't the case for this year's rotation. Though they had decent starts from Nick Pivetta and Tanner Houck, and then Nathan Eovaldi. Garrett Richards got roughed up a little bit, but the Red Sox so far have lost 3 out of the first 4, including a home sweep against Baltimore, which is kind of considering where everybody thought that Baltimore would be at this point in time, it's definitely something that people need to sort of pay attention to. Their real question is just their offense. Is it going to rebound after just getting swept by the Orioles, or is it just going to kind of go? Are they going to kind of go into a deeper hole that they're going to have to kind of dig themselves out of? That's really the real question. I mean, their rotation is going to be halfway decent. They're not going to be terrible. And if they're able to get Chris Sale back, that'll obviously improve if he's healthy. But so far, there's really nothing that. I mean, the Red Sox shouldn't be that worried about this season just because they're not gonna make the playoffs this year. So it's obviously the Red Sox are in sort of a reloading mode, not necessarily a rebuilding mode, but they're trying to get back to where they were as soon as possible. So up next, the team I want to talk about is the Braves. The Braves are not doing well at all at the moment. The Braves currently rank in terms of OPS. In terms of OPS, the Braves are 28th right now. They have the only teams that are worse right now hitting the ball are the other two of the other 2 teams on this list, and that's the Oakland Athletics and the Milwaukee Brewers. The Braves' current OPS is 539. They're hitting 153, which ranks currently out of every team. Their 153 ranking is tied for last with the Chicago Cubs. They're not hitting the ball well at all, and it's hard to win when you only have 17 hits as opposed to other teams that have, like the Dodgers, that have 61 hits. It's not a great job for, if you're a Braves fan, you should probably be a little concerned at this point, just because the Braves are in a division where you can't have a slow start like this. This division could go to any one of the 4 teams that are I guess it could go a little bit to the Marlins, but there's a small chance that the Marlins end up winning this division, but that is incredibly unlikely. It's just probably not going to happen at all. And so the Nationals and the Mets and the Phillies all have a real shot at winning this division. And if you're a Braves fan, you should definitely be concerned with their offense. I mean, the Braves' offense is what carried them through the 2020 season. They had 3 potential MVPs, and one of them actually ended up winning with Freddie Freeman and Marcell Ozuna. Marcell Ozuna almost won the Triple Crown, and then you also have Ronald Acuna Jr. And they were great last year, but so far that trio is, out of the first 4 games, those 3 guys have gone 3 for 32 with no RBIs. And the Braves have only scored 3 runs all year. So you should definitely be worried about that if the Braves are where they are, or if the Braves are going to be something that is actually is going to be a contender. Ozuna's probably the biggest wild card so far after his 2020 performance was kind of an outlier. But all three of them are going to bounce back. But the question is are they going to be able to carry that team to the promised land like a lot of people were expecting them to? Now, granted, I think the Mets are probably the best division or team in that division. But like I said just a few seconds ago, that doesn't mean just because a team is better or has more talent, if the Braves offense is gonna come out to this slow start, and the Mets aren't going or don't produce enough runs for their pitching staff, the Phillies could run away with this division. So I think the Phillies are a very surprising team, and I'm gonna talk about them in a few minutes. But like the Braves pitching is not what is going to carry them. It's going to be their offense and their defense. And right now, the Braves don't have an offense. And I mean that's hard to say, but it's just the truth. Like right now, pitching wise, the Braves are doing okay. I mean, in terms of ERA, the Braves are 9th in ERA right now with a 3.07. So their pitching is doing relatively okay. They've only played the 3 games and have only played 29 and a third innings. They did lose in extras. But, I mean, their pitching is doing surprisingly okay. Their team ERA is a 3.07. They have pitched a combined 29 innings, giving up 29 hits and 13 runs. 10 of those are earned. They've given up 2 home runs and hit 3 batters. They've struck out 42 as opposed to walking 12, and so their offense is letting them down big time. Like it's pretty apparent. Like if your team ERA is in the top 10, you should be winning baseball games, and right now the Braves just haven't. Granted, it is really early, so it might not be anything to freak out about. But right now, I think that is their offense is just such a big question. The Brewers are the team I want to talk about next. So the question about the Brewers is the lineup going to be bad again? The roughest part last year was that Christian Yelich had the worst year of his career. He's easily the best hitter on that team, and he had the highest OPS plus with 110 of any Brewer with at least 150 plate appearances last year. But the Brewers finally figured out their rotation, and they've gotten some really good help in their defense, but they've got to hit. Right now, the Brewers are 1-3 with the second worst OPS in baseball. They're only ahead of the Braves in that. And they just have 4 extra base hits in those 4 games. And it looks like Castellanos is going to be a bad signing for them. He was a big ticket, he was a big signing for them in the offseason. And before regressing pretty dramatically, he began the season 0 for 15. Christian Yelich so far has struck out 9 of the 17 times he's come up to bat. He's just not hitting the ball right now, and that's really surprising for the Brewers. I mean, the Brewers' pitching staff is doing it's not doing great, but it's not what they should be worried about. And I mean, the Brewers are 1-3 right now. Obviously, their ERA is 20th in the league right now, tied for 20th, I should say, with the Royals with a 4.75 ERA. They've given up quite a few. They've given up quite a few runs, I would say. They've given up 19 earned runs out of 20 total runs. They've given up a lot of home runs as well. They've given up 7 home runs, and that 7 home run total is near the top of the league, to say the least. They're tied for 6th in home runs given up with 7. The Oakland A's have given up the most home runs, but I hitting wise is just the Brewers are going to have to be better. They're going to have to get on base, and they're going to have to find ways to win right now, or the Reds might end up being one of the most surprising teams in baseball and win that division. And I'm going to talk about them here in a minute as well. But before I do that, I got to talk about the Athletics. So they did a bullpen makeover this last year, and much of the concern about this offseason was, other than the departures of Robbie Grossman and Marcus Semien, it was just revolved around revamping their bullpen. They added Sergio Romo, Trevor Rosenthal, and Adam Kolarek in late February, and those pitchers have given up 7 runs in 3 innings. Rosenthal is right now on the injured list, but the rest of the bullpen is just imploding right now. They've given up a total of 19 earned runs in 23 innings, and the A's are off to a just god-awful 0-5 start. And they've been outscored by a total of 33 runs so far. They are going to have to figure out what is going on in that bullpen and get back on top of things, because right now it's not working. The Cardinals are another team that I want to talk about. The rotation is probably their biggest concern. They do have Jack Flaherty. He struggled last year, but he seems to be doing decent all right. They do have Adam Wainwright, but he's nearing 40. They have a very inconsistent Carlos Martinez, who has had a bunch of injury concerns. But in the first 3 games, Flaherty, Wainwright, and Martinez, the 3 guys the Cardinals thought that they could really count on, gave up 16 earned runs in 12 innings against the Reds. And if anything, they were lucky to just win one of those games against the Reds. And that was the very first game of the year where Eugenio Suarez just kind of gave up let the Cardinals sort of run rampant after giving up a couple errors in the first inning. And you obviously can't blame the loss on one player, but Suarez's errors in the first inning and misplays the rest of the game were just absolute awful mistakes that sort of helped the Cardinals win the first game of the year for them. Their offense is good. They do have a very good offense, especially locking down the corners with Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. It's just going to. That's definitely a little interesting, to say the very least, right there, because both of those guys are doing pretty good, and they do have a relatively easier series against Miami right now, but St. Louis needs their pitching staff to turn it around right here, and the Marlins are a very young and talented team, and I don't think if the Cardinals don't flip it around soon, and granted it's still so early in the year, but if the Cardinals don't flip it around soon, they're going to be handing this division to either the Cubs or the Reds, because the Brewers need to turn it around as well, because both of those two teams were projected to be very, very good this year, and right now the Reds and the Cubs are sort of blowing them out of the water. And that's a little bit surprising, to say the least. And granted, it hasn't been even a month into the season. It's been an opening series. So, but you can see a little bit out of these opening series and see and understand what wasn't working right there. And for the Cardinals, it was their rotation. They were just not they were just not helping out their offense at all. And with Castellanos hitting, I think it was 2 home runs against them. Fortunately, I would say the good thing for the Cardinals is that they got into that little scuffle with Castellanos and the rest of the Reds, sort of because people aren't paying attention that much to their play on the field. And they're more focusing on that aspect of it, that aspect of the season so far, as, oh, look, these guys got into a brawl, let's talk about that kind of thing, instead of, oh, wait, the Cardinals almost are lucky to have even won a game in this Reds series. And so those are some teams that have some really legitimate concerns. In the next segment, I'm going to talk about some teams that are really surprising coming out of the gate really strong, and we're going to talk about that in just a second.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
All right, and welcome back to the last segment of today's episode, where we're going to be talking about some teams that have been really surprising. And first and foremost, obviously, I think we got to talk about the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles swept the Red Sox on the road in Fenway with one of probably the most surprising things I think I've seen in a while. And they did lose their first game at the Yankees, a few days ago, and I'm recording this on Tuesday, August 6th. So I won't know what happened today when the episode posts. I guess it would be today, April 7th. But the Orioles just came out really strong. They absolutely surprised the heck out of me. They played on, or they were supposed to play on April 1st, but had a rain delay to make it up, and then beat the Red Sox 3-0, getting 9 hits and giving up just 2. And Means from John Means of the Orioles got the first win. He played a little bit last year. He was drafted in the 11th round by the Orioles in 2014. He played a little bit last year, going 2-4, but so far he has pitched 7 innings this season, and in the one game that he pitched, and struck out 5 and didn't give up a run. That is really impressive, to say the very least. And then you go to Saturday, April 3rd, and the Red Sox lost to the Orioles 4-2. The Orioles out-hit the Red Sox 8-7 with a pretty surprising, I would say, turn of events. Adam Plunko, who had gotten traded to the Orioles pretty recently, that was his first start of the year for the Orioles, and he did a really good job as well. He got the win, but he did not get the start. He did do a very good job. He went 2 1/3 innings, didn't give up a run, and then Blake Houck got the loss in that game as well. And I think that this is a very surprising team, to say the least. Matt Harvey started the game, went 4 2/3 innings, gave up 2 runs and 6 hits, and struck out 4 while walking just 1. And then Blake Houck got the loss on the game. He started for the Red Sox, going 5 full, giving up 6 hits, 2 earned runs, but 3 runs total. And that ultimately ended up being the difference maker in the game. That was pretty interesting. It looks like the Orioles might actually have a really competitive team this year. And then if you go to April 4th, where they finished the series, Baltimore just beat the doors off of the Red Sox thanks to a big help in the 3rd inning. Zimmerman got the start for the Orioles. Bruce Zimmerman, a left-handed pitcher who has done pretty well this year, considering he's pitched on only one game, going 6 innings, striking out 5, and giving up 3 earned runs. And then kind of just getting to cruise after that third inning where he gave up his 3 earned runs, which is all the Red Sox got on the 4th. And then yesterday, or April 5th, they lost the Yankees. They kind of got blown out, but that's okay. When you start out the season as strong as the Orioles did, I think that's okay. The Orioles lost to the Yankees 7-0 with only getting 4 hits. They faced Jordan Montgomery, and Jorge Lopez pitched for the Orioles, and he got roughed up a little bit, but he went 4 2/3, giving up 4 earned runs, walking 3, striking out 5, and he did give up a home run. But overall, I don't think there is a more surprising team so far in baseball right now. In terms of average, the O's are 10th right now in ERA, with a 3.09 ERA. They have given up 22 hits, just 12 runs, only 3 home runs. They've only walked 13, and they've struck out 34, which is really, really impressive. And then you go to the hitting stats, and the Baltimore Orioles are 6th in average, with a team average of 266 and an on-base percentage of 325. They just did really, really well against the Red Sox, and they struggled the other day against the Yankees, but that's still just really impressive, I would say, so far. Nothing other than really the Red Sox kind of surprises me in that division, but I didn't expect the Red Sox to be any good. I just didn't expect the Orioles to just absolutely destroy the Red Sox in the few games that they played so far. Up next, I think one of the more surprising teams is Detroit. Now, granted, Detroit is 3-2 right now, but they did beat Minnesota in their last game on August. Or they did beat Minnesota, I should say, today. As I'm recording this, they won in 10, 3-2, beating Minnesota. I think that's. But Detroit is looking like a really tough team. They have some really young guys that are actually really, really good at baseball so far. In their first game, they beat the Cleveland Indians and Shane Bieber by a score of 3-2. The Cleveland Indians didn't score any runs until the top of the 9th, and Shane Bieber did okay in that game. But what was more surprising is how good Boyd pitched for the Tigers. Boyd threw for 5 2/3 innings, struck out 2, but didn't give up any runs. He was very impressive in his first start. And then if you go to the next game that they played, it was Saturday, April 3rd, and the Zach Plesac lost his battle against Julio Teheran, who is a new pitcher, very, very good guy for the Tigers to have. And he pitched 5 innings. He gave up just 1 run, walked 3, but also struck out 3. And the 1 run he gave up was on a solo home run. He only gave up 4 hits. And when you look at Zach Plesac, that's pretty surprising considering Plesac went 6 innings, gave up only 2 runs and struck out 4. And like it's pretty interesting to see how good the Tigers have been so far. Obviously, Miguel Cabrera has been doing very well so far, as has Shoop and Wilson Ramos. The Tigers have just been excellent so far this year, and they did lose the 3rd game of the series with Aaron Savall pitching for the Indians and Skubal pitching for the Tigers. Savall went 7 innings, giving up 3 earned runs, just 2 hits, however. Walked 3, struck out 6, but did give up 2 solo shots for the Tribe. And then Skubal went 5 1/3 for Detroit, giving up just 2 earned runs, walking 2, striking out 4. And I think more importantly, Norris kind of got sort of in a bad situation when he came in. He lost and caused he lost going just an inning and 2/3, giving up 4 earned runs, and then pretty much the Cleveland Indians were just kind of on a scoring spree once they got the starter out. And then their most recent game against the Twins was Monday, April 5th, and they lost 15-6. They kind of got the doors blown off them in those 2 games. For Minnesota, Matt Shoemaker went 6 innings and gave up just 1 run. And then you had Urena for Detroit going 3 innings, giving up 5 earned runs, 6 runs total. Only had 4 hits against him, but did walk 4, struck out 5, however. But once the Twins got out to that hot start, there really wasn't anything that they could do. And so the Twins had a 3-3 record, and then just earlier today, the Tigers beat Minnesota by a score of 4-3 in 10 innings, with J.A. Happ for Minnesota going 4 innings, giving up just 1 run, and Mize for Detroit went 4 innings as well, giving up just 1 run, and the winning pitcher for Detroit was Soto. Gregory Soto, and the losing pitcher for the Twins was Hansel Robles. But if you go to the stats, the Tigers are 20th in hitting in terms of average. But I mean they're still doing really good, or they're still doing pretty decent, honestly, in terms of runs scored. They are, in terms of runs scored, they're 11th with 21 runs scored. And then you go over to their pitching stats, and their pitching stats have honestly been hit or miss, it looks like, so far during the season. They rank in terms of ERA near the bottom with a 5.87 ERA, but that's just because in the couple games that they've lost, they lost big. But in terms of actually, or in terms of the games that they won, they have actually done a pretty good, I would say a pretty decent job in terms of throwing, just doing pretty well. I think that their pitching can let them down at times, but I don't think that their pitching is always going to let them down. And the next team that we're going to talk about is, I think, the Oakland Athletics. The Athletics are 0-5 and have been struggling quite a bit. They are facing the Dodgers right now in a series, and statistic-wise, the Athletics are not doing well at all. In terms of average, or ERA, they have the second highest team average with 8.60 compared to compared to the rest of the league. They are 29th, only ahead of the Rangers. They're just not pitching well at all right now, and hitting is not really saving them right now either. They're in hitting in terms of average. Their average for the season so far is not great. It's 27th. They're hitting 172. All around, they just are not a good team right now. They have just not performed at the level anybody was expecting them to perform at. And they lost to the Astros in their first game, 1-8. In the second game against the Astros that they played, they lost 9-5. They got a little bit more run support in that game, but in the third game that they played, they lost 1-9 again. And it's just not going good for the Athletics so far. And then in the fourth game of that series, they lost 9-2. So their pitching staff is letting them down quite a bit, but they're not getting any help from their bats either. Right now, they're just not performing well, and bottom line, that's just what the story is. They're just not doing well, and I certainly hope that they can turn it around. Otherwise, it's going to be a two-man race to win that division between the Angels and the Astros, and I think that the Astros might actually beat them out. But granted, the Angels are another team that is very, very surprising. The Angels so far this year have the 10th highest batting average with a 254. Their on-base percentage is respectable 333. So every three batters that come up for the Angels, somebody's getting on base. Right now, the Angels are getting at least a person on base every inning, and that is very, very crucial to a team's success. And that it kind of explains how they're doing or why they're doing so good in the first place. It's pretty surprising, honestly. The Angels are tied for first with the Astros with a 4-1 record. They're barely outscoring their opponents. They're giving up a lot of pitching woes, but they're scoring more than their opponents, and that's really, that's the end goal is to score more than their opponents. In terms of ERA, they're ranking near the bottom, they're ranking in the bottom third at a 4.76 ERA. But they're still winning their games, and that's important. Right now, they're going to be in a grudge match against Houston. They did beat Houston. They did beat Houston in the first game of the series on April 5th, and right now they're in a dogfight against the Astros, and that's going to be very, very fun to watch. In their first game or in their first series, they had a very fun series against the White Sox where they lost the first game by a score of 12-8, but bounced back, winning by a score of 3-5, and then won the final game of that series 7-4, and then won the first game by just a run by a score of 6-7 against the Houston Astros. And then real quick, we're going to talk about just one more team, and that team is definitely the Atlanta Braves. The Braves are surprising to say the very least right now. The Reds are doing very good as well, are doing very good, and I think that is very surprising. But I think that lies more in the fact that they played St. Louis, and St. Louis was not doing well. The Braves, however, are struggling quite a bit. They are playing today against the Nationals as I'm recording this, so they may have won a game, but they lost their first game against Philly after 10. The Philadelphia Phillies walked it off, but then they lost 4-0 against the Phillies, and then they lost by 1 to the Phillies. So it's not like they were bad at all, but in fact their team ERA is near the top. Their ERA for the team is 2.84, which is 7th so far this season. But the problem is that they're just not hitting the ball at all. They rank 29th in batting average with 158 as their average. That is only higher than the Cubs. And if the Braves are going to be good, they're going to have to hit the ball really well. That's what made them so good last year, and that's really what the difference has been the last few years with them. is that they've just hit the ball so well. And like we talked about earlier, the Braves just they're just not hitting the ball that well right now with the lack of production from Freddie Freeman, Ronald Acuna Jr., and Marcell Ozuna. It's just kind of inexcusable. When you have a three-headed trio like that, sometimes they're all going to be cold, but right out of the gate, they are not doing very well. As of right now, as I am recording this podcast, they have scored 4 runs against the Nationals so far, and it's tied 4-4 in the top of the 7th. But so they might be turning around, and it might have just been a fluke after the first few games, but that's definitely something that teams are going to have to, or the Braves and Braves fans are going to have to look out for. So that's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Thank y'all for listening. My name is Patrick Kenny. Follow us at GSMC_baseball and leave us a review on Apple iTunes. Follow us on Spotify. Give us a comment on YouTube. We'd love to see how we can help y'all like the podcast more. So thank you guys for listening. My name is Patrick Kenny. I hope y'all have a great day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.